getting an epoxy based primer put on the car. Everything's been test fit, trunk, hood, taillights. Test fit the bumpers before we finish the bodywork. There's a lot of sanding to do yet, because the sandpaper is more coarse at this point, and this will seal everything up. They'll be able to block sand it out, shoot a few more coats on, then they'll clean the inside here and do the same with that. Pretty quick here, we'll be covering the dash with leather on the bottom, the glove box area, and then when the car is sprayed, be coming back, and that'll get leathered. The back top well and so on will get leathered, but we gotta spray it here first. So that's what he's doing today. I know it looks kind of blotchy. That's areas where there's bare aluminum and other primer and some of the filler, because there was dents in the hood we had to work out. That'll all blend together. Like I said, a lot of block sanding. This entire area here was very nice. There was dings and dents in different spots here that had to be knocked out and filled. So there's a small amount, thin coat of filler, and that's different color when they spray over it with the primer. So once this cures, this will be going out of here this week, and to another shop where they got a paint booth and actually going to be spraying this with color. So we'll get back just before this thing heads out. Customer did mention something about this, and we're getting to the point now where we're going to be blasting and painting rims. This is the spare. This thing's not just slightly tweaked here and there. It's bent from right here to right here, twisted. It's bent from right here to right here. That flange is bent in. It's bent here again in this area. I guess a little bit more here. I can hammer that back, but whether it'll be true or not, if it was only one side of the rim, I can hammer on it better. But look, somebody beat the living snot out of this. These are all hammer marks through here, and this whole lip, which should be leaning a little bit towards the tire, is leaning inward. So I'd have to hammer it back a long ways, and then we're really not sure it'll seal properly, are we? It's sealed now though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad he's getting new tires. Look at those weather checks in there. Look at that crack.
Well, that's a spare.
I know, but look how long that crack is. It starts here, and that crack goes all the way, a third of the way around the tire. The rest of the tire doesn't look that bad, does it?
No, I wouldn't run.
I'm inclined to, let's look out in our archives out there. This is a February of 1958, as long as we're close, and it has these spring clips. Let's see if we can find a tire. I don't feel comfortable. I know it'll be a spare, but that thing's gonna wobble all over the place.
Right, even if you have to put it on.
Even if you used to use it, it's gonna,
Yeah.
I can see it here, it looks almost egg-shaped. All right.
February of 58, all right.
I don't know if Michael has seen these. This is a car we've had before his. His is actually going in for paint before that, before this one.
Yeah.
And this one is one we're going to be starting soon. This is a 250 SL. So I'm going to let you take this with you so you can get some shots of that car as you're finishing the priming and getting color on it. Vehicle's back. We've already got wiring pulled through most of it. They attempted to record as they were painting the different stages, and something happened and it did not record a thing. So we'll walk around it here. We don't have natural light, we have just fluorescent. I sent some pictures to the customer already. He thought it looked a little dark, but again, it's in fluorescent lighting. We'll get some shots outside. A lot of the wiring has been pulled through. We have to leather the dash, and we have to obviously install gauges and so on so we can hook that up. Still need wet sanding and buffing. We're letting the paint dry and cure a little bit longer. Weather's been really humid and that slows things down. You can see a lot of the grommets and the wiring are pulled through for the headlights, for the horn, coil wiring here to the generator, and we'll have wiring coming back to the voltage regulator. A variety of things have already been installed. Insulation up under the dash there, you can see. I'm gonna wipe the lens here. It looks like there's dust. Let's see if I can clean that up a little bit. Yeah, it might be a little cleaner. We're going to start with the leathering here. Yesterday we took aluminum parts that were tarnished and scuffed and sanded them. These will get buffed. These will get buffed out today so they're shiny. This was pretty dull and nasty. It's been wet sanded with 1000 grit sandpaper. And that will be buffed out and then clear coated. I believe, I don't know if I don't think we filmed this because he had the camera when he was painting a car. This is the throwout bearing for this car, and the bearings in it are shot. They is this the one?
Yeah, that's the one that's shot.
You know, it kind of growls. Did you get the spacer sleeve for back here?
Yeah, it's right here. You can take it back.
You didn't need it?
No, because this bearing is the same as the bearing that I took off.
Okay, so the bearing's okay. So I won't bill him for that spacer then. But this growls and is nasty inside, so we can't put that back in. Oh, we got a bad U-joint here. That's not smooth at all. That way is. That's got a heck of a catch in it. Yeah. Is this the later? That's the later one that we actually are able to get. I was able to get the early ones, remember?
Yeah, I think this is the later one.
But this is the later one? All right, I'll get you a U-joint. You can't put that back on the drive
I
shaft.
meant to tell you that yesterday.
The clutch in this was okay though, wasn't it? Didn't we say the clutch looked really good? Like new? Okay. So we'll take contact cement here. This is a lot of the things that we had 2 vats of parts plated for his car and another car. It kind of split the value between the 2 customers. And we had some extra stuff here done. A variety of these. We used a bunch of these on Michael's car already. These are the parts inside the brakes. So a lot of, this was like twice this much laying here. And a variety of pieces here that still go on the car that we had plated.
I think they're all.
We cleaned this up and kind of polished it and then clear coated the booster so it has a kind of a sealer on it. Put a grommet in the heater blower motor housing. He's painting up things like the horns, heater boxes and the like. We had to have both heater cores record.
That's wet. So stick your finger inside of it.
In here?
Yep.
This is quite corroded and pitted. It's the other half of this, isn't it? No, it's this one. Because I can see daylight right through the holes. We're just going to seam seal it on the inside. It's not that critical. All we want is no air flowing. These are very expensive, and we'll just clean this up and seal it, and it'll look fine, and it'll work fine. This is the other end. This mounts the heater core. You can see a lot of corrosion around the bottom. This gets bolted down to a thick rubber seal. Speaking of that, did I get you the rubber seals for the heater boxes to the body? Those thick foam seals?
He needs the one for the fasteners.
He doesn't need the driver's one, the thin one?
No, the driver's one's a big thick one. He's got it on the car.
Is it usable?
I would use it.
Huh?
I would use it.
You would?
I would see it.
As long as it
It'll seal.
long as it seals and it's still operational. Oh, this had been replaced at one time. This probably isn't the original. That's okay. That one's still fine. So you need the one for over there.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the thinner one.
Yeah.
All right, I'll remember to grab that. So we got our walk around here. Again, wiring's been pulled through the trunk and up through here. There's the bracket. Sometimes you get these painted black. We're going to leave it yellow cad. If the customer wants it, he can paint it black, but we kind of like some changing scenes, if you will, changing colors. And then we've got all the tabs here, and this is the wires going to the fuel tank. Speaking of that, this is his fuel tank. This is a early enough car where the fuel tank's not vented. The cap needs to be vented. This cap has no gasket on it. We're reluctant to put a gasket on it because if we do, it'll seal better, but the tank won't be properly vented and it'll end up sucking the fuel tank in. So we're going to have to discuss this, what we're going to do. Using this cap, the customer cannot fill his fuel tank. When he accelerates and gas shoots up into here, it'll dribble out down below. But this has to remain vented. These vents are sealed off because this was a new tank that someone put on here, and they just joined these vents so that the fumes wouldn't leak out. And this tube goes from here to here, and the fuel tank cap remains vented to let air in as fuel goes out. If it doesn't let air in, it sucks the gas tank closed and crushes it and the car quits. So we're not sure we're going to be able to put a gasket on this one. It's not the proper cap for this car. But anyway, this is all assembled. I was telling you about a lot of the cadmium plated bolts and attaching parts. They're all here for the brakes. It gives them a rust preventative coating. You got a new sway bar bolt kit. Again, everything here. This is all assembled, resealed, everything ready to go. Rear end here is finished and assembled, ready to go. It's rolling around on a set of used axles that we have, that we just use for moving these cars around. So assembly will take place rather quickly. We got 3 of us here working on it, and we'll get shots as we go along. Starting in leather, got the back in. We're doing trimming, putting the defroster ducts in up front here, painting a variety of trinkets that get put on here that end up, most of them are ending up black. So, contact cemented the wall and the leather, putting it in. We're trimming here. We're trimming here. We don't need quite that much overlap. I'll probably trim this a little bit more. We're trimming right here, because there's a separate piece of leather that lays here. So we'll be trimming up in here. There's a couple of holes right here to mount the adjuster for the tensioner adjuster for the
leather back, because it's not going to stick.
For the convertible top cable tensioner. I didn't push very hard over here yet, so this is just like setting. So cable covers this back clean down to here, so that'll all be underneath. So preliminarily we got this rolling, and we'll get some shots after this gets completed. The back wall is done, trimmed. This is glued. The next 3 pieces are all glued up. They're about ready to install. What we're doing right now is Rob's assembling some trim in here to trim off these windlace. He's going to be putting that in there. I'm polishing up these trim rings. That's an after. It's not real perfect, but here's a before. And here I just started on this one here, and this is what they look like before. We have some, I'm hoping not too bad a rust or pits, but we're going to clean these up. They won't be perfect, but they should be pretty nice. We call it patina with a little bit of age in the deal here. So gas tank's been painted where it was scuffed. That's getting ready to go. The heater boxes have been assembled and painted. Rob, did you seal those pinholes in that one?
Yes.
So we're good to go there?
Yeah.
So I can go ahead and put these in?
Yeah.
Let them dry a little bit longer?
Let them dry a little bit, yeah.
Okay. So we're going to go there. I'll finish cleaning these babies here up. And then we'll get some shots after another couple hours. Entire top well is done. It's the end of the day on Wednesday, September 19th. We've got the wind lacing attached on this one side here with the aluminum channel that helps hold it on. It's also going to hold the kick panel on. This one here will go up under here. Heater boxes are in. Getting the heater blower assembly and all in over here on this side. Right hand heater box and air tube all in on this side. Both of the defroster ducts are in place, wiper motor, etc. Cleaned up a variety of brake lines. Took the time to bead blast this brake line, assuming that it was a new one at one time. And it is very pitted right in here. Being a single master cylinder, any brake leak, you have no brakes whatsoever. I don't know if I showed these. These are the trim rings I polished up with steel wool. They're not perfect, but they come out pretty nice. Bead blasted these, getting them ready to paint tomorrow. Grill screen's been cleaned, blasted. Brackets for the mounting the booster are here. Steel wool this channel. Cleaned it up, buffed it, and we clear coated it with a clear material. You don't see much of this, but after you buff out aluminum, anything it touches or rubs on it turns black. So we've cleaned all the black sooty stuff off and kind of cleaned it all up and cleared it so it'll look a lot nicer than it did. It was getting dingy and pitted, so got that. I believe that's his turn signal canister. Bumpers are here and assembled, and this is the convertible top rear surround. Dirty fingerprint here, which we'll clean up. Got the snaps in that. Like I said, bumpers assembled. We got bumper bolt mounting kits that we're putting together. I think I already showed the fact that we got the gas tank painted. The process of putting a brand new rubber seal around the windshield. I will polish up the chrome. It's got a new seal on the bottom. Put that back together. We'll polish up the visors and stuff. This won't be put on right away, but we have to do the dash. I will also clean up the grill and the stone guards that are in pretty nice shape. So everything looks nicely polished up. So we will get back tomorrow on the 20th, and we'll take a look at the progress we get done tomorrow. We have his wood panels, carpeted panels. They're originals, they're pretty warped. Someone stuck speakers in them. I'll talk to the customer about that. This is the ground cable. This end's been replaced. Wires jammed in there, they're kind of hanging out. Somehow it got lanced and cut right there. And it got frayed here. And the cables are all corroded and getting green. This cable we want to put a new one on. Here's a correct one, properly made by Rhode Island Wiring. This is his positive battery cable. The insulation's cracked here, but I think what we're going to do, this doesn't look like it's even correct. Hey Rob, does that eyelet look awful tiny to you? It's not the right size hole to go on the starter solenoid. So I think we may put new shrink wrap on this one. Where's the starter?
Yesterday she said, I think there's two left.
No, she
Some people may find
The eyelet looks awful small. I realize the ground one has a bigger eye. Yeah, it fits it. All right, I'll get some shrink tube for that one. We'll shrink that one up. So we'll get a hold of the customer, see what he wants to do with these wood pieces, whether he wants those speakers back in there or not. Putting the motor back together so we can get it on the suspension. We've got a light amount of copper coat sprayed on things for better sealant. These are the bolts that held the camshaft rocker arm stands in place. They're all supposed to look like this with the larger head. You can see that these threads are kind of mugged up here. This has the bottom two threads are shot. If you put these in, they can tear the aluminum up in the head. These two bolts don't even belong in the engine whatsoever. They're supposed to look like this. They just threw regular bolts back in. The threads are fine, but you can see that thread even here is damaged. Anyway, they put a helicoil, new threads in that hole, new threads in that hole. I don't know about these. They look original, but they are clean. Rob went to our used parts section here and got us 4 good used bolts with good threads, clean threads, and the correct cutouts in them. So that's what we're going to use for these. We are not going to use these. So he's getting everything together here so we can pop this back together. I'm sure we showed it earlier. We had painted the motor all up. We do have a correct gear in here now. We had a really hard time getting these. So we should be good to go there. So we'll get some shots later. I don't think I filmed the car today, but I did film bits and pieces of what we have accomplished. They've put some more things in, brake lines and the like. We're gonna have to make the front brake line. I think that's the one that I think I gotta clean that up yet. Windshield wipers, and it looks like the shaft and rods are all installed. I did this yesterday. We have to let some things tack up a little more on the dash and the glove box. We have to let this, we have to glue this to put leather along here and on the glove box. And they resprayed this because they tried to spray this. They used kind of this in the glove compartment as a sample a week or so ago, and the humidity was just crazy high, and this got all funny, so they actually sanded it all down and resprayed it just the other day. We wanted that to tack up a little bit more before we put any glue on here, so it doesn't have any capability of raising the paint or damaging the paint with the solvents in the glue. So, coming along well. We'll get back in a few more hours. Okay, on Michael's car, we blasted these the other day when we did the rims, and the ends of these disappeared. They're rotted completely away. Couldn't tell it before, they were covered with so much junk. But there isn't an end on them that really has enough material left on it to attach. This has holes way back to the beginning of the curve. I don't know how these were on the car and didn't leak, but You still rust is rattling around inside of it, isn't it? So we're not going to go with new ones because the customer is getting more money into the car than he really wants to do. The only thing I've got new is stainless steel, which is expensive. So I'm going to go out to my shop here out in my used parts. I know I have a few sets of used ones where we put new stainless ones on cars. So I can't put these back on. There's just no way. This is supposed to be about a ½ inch longer. I could use that end by sawing it off, but this is pitted and shot all the way back into the curve. And this is too. By the time I cut that off, I'm not going to have anything to push metal onto. Same thing with these others. Yeah. And this has holes. This I could saw back, but those ends are so bad that I can't use it. This I could cut off. But that, if I cut it off, I'm back into the curve. You can't get a hose clamp on that, so they're both toast. I think we showed this before. This is real smooth this way. And this, you can see the U-joint hangs up. It should just naturally, even with the weight of that collar, that should naturally drop. I have to shake it in order for it to drop because the bearings in it are all tight and shot. Now this way, perfectly smooth. This way here, real tight. So we're going to knock that apart here in a minute, clean this all up, and put a new joint in it. All right, Rob's telling me the pins go in here to hold the guides. These two are fitting decent. These two are loose and slide out. So these holes have been eroded. We can't tell why or how. We're going to have to cheat here a little bit. We're going to have to knurl or prick punch the aluminum to swell that hole closed enough, because when these things go in, there is a little prong right here. You got one of the pins?
Yeah.
There's a little prong right there that this pin, that prong will snap into. Hold this in location, see? And that will pull back out. But this pin has to bite into the aluminum really tight or it'll can slide out, because there's no prong down here to hold this one in location. This one holds the guide in location. This one just keeps the bottom of the guide located, you know, vertically. So it can't slide back and forth because of that. But here, these pins are just going into the holes here way too easy. Okay, that one's a little bit better already because I've tapped it a couple of times. But we're gonna have to, we gotta disrupt this aluminum enough to cause it to bite onto the pin. We're going to do that on both holes because the other ones, ooh, that one's real soft. You know, that's got a sleeve in it, it looks like. This one here is,
Shouldn't.
this one here is softer. They're going to go in real hard now. I don't want to hit it too much. We do want it to go in, but we don't want it to slide out or fall out. Okay, that's already tighter. That's already tighter. Okay. Let me film you popping these things in there with that guide. Let me slip around here. I don't know if I can do this. I got to hold one. Can you hold that?
Good. I'm used to working around.
That's not going to go, that's not even going to start well. You may want to tap that You may want to tap that in there a little bit before we even start with that guide. It ain't gonna go in real easy. That's more like it though. We're going in?
Yeah, we don't put it all in and leave it out about a quarter.
Is that far enough? You want to?
Just leave it out about a quarter of an inch. Okay.
Put your thumb over to the end. Give me something to aim at. Okay. Now here. You got your light?
Oh, I don't have to have that no more.
No. Grab your flashlight.
That actually looks like it's lined up.
Is it going to go right in?
Yeah. Okay. I gotta put sealer on them, otherwise the oil's gonna leak out of them.
Okay. Well, these will be a little tighter than they were before. So now we're satisfied, right?
Yeah.
You're good enough with what we got? Okay. He puts a sealer around it because this whole area is just bathed in oil. And if there's any way possible for that oil to get out, it will. So we're sealing this so he doesn't have dribbles down the front of his engine. So anyway, there's that. And I did put a new universal joint in this. It's got new clips, got a new joint, new clips. New joints are not going to be quite as loose as the old one, but there's no clunky tight spots where you feel a bearing in it tight. It's all smooth whichever way we push it. So that's done, and clean that up and paint it, and then we'll have the drive shaft. All components of drive shaft then are either cleaned, replaced, or rebuilt now, right?
Yeah.
We checked the bearings in the middle and all that stuff. I think that was all okay.
Yeah,
All right, we'll get back in a few more hours. Motor's almost all together. We've filmed this before. This tensioner did not work properly, so they jammed a nut on the end of it and almost destroyed the motor. So while this is being assembled, we need a new tensioner. Can't use this one. We put a used cover on here and a new thermostat and the gaskets. I'm not sure you're going to be able to get this to seal. Really, that's going to be really iffy. And there was no guts in his old thermostat whatsoever. They knocked it all out of there. And the housing is pretty roached. We're worried about it sealing. We'll discuss a few of these other things. They got stuff nicely cleaned up and painted. This is what the distributor mounts on. So it's coming along. He's gonna pop this, pour some oil in where the tensioner rides so that there's an oil reserve in there, and it helps prime the tensioner. So we'll get back in a couple more hours. I'm gonna clean up the grill and see if he's ready to have some of that stuff put in the car. Yesterday we sandblasted the fan and other goodies, painted them up nice silver. Today we took this out of the engine. Hang on just a second. You can see how long the end of the nipple there is supposed to be. This has been cut and trimmed, and it's very rusty, very soft. See that dent right here? There's a crack right there that goes back another almost quarter of an inch. That means the rubber hose would be back here on the curve, and we'd want the clamp to clamp way back here. We didn't feel safe with that. So I popped this out of the cylinder head, and it wasn't even very tight. so it probably would have had some seepage there. So we're putting these, we had these cadmium or zinc plated some time ago along with a bunch of other stuff. So we did have a spare set because we put a bunch of stuff with it. This is all sealed up, I can turn it. And so he'll turn this in. We lock the inner one first. And then he can aim this where he wants it and lock the outer one, which will pull it together. So right now we'll get this out of the way enough to turn that in and tighten it. But we have to replace it. We don't feel comfortable using that other, so we'll snug this in here once this is in. What are you looking for?
Okay.
So we'll get some shots. I can't think of, oh, I've polished up the grill, polishing up the windshield frame, like triple crazy aught. I'm gonna look for a used left wing. Someone drilled a hole clean through it. They obviously didn't do it on the other side. And they didn't even put all the bolts in it. There's screws loose under here and missing. So I'm gonna see if I've got a decent one without a hole in it. Everything else looks so nice here. Or you gotta drill a hole through that side, which isn't proper. There's supposed to be a stud sticking out that goes through the body and gets tightened. But we're gonna get the windshield frame put together. There's a new seal around the glass. We'll get that done shortly. And then we'll get some shots here in a little while. Sorry about the air compressors in the distance. We have 3 of them in here. 4 of them, we only use 3 of them. The big one on top, you wouldn't even be able to hear me if that thing was running. So there's 2 of them running down here. I want to pop this off because this is dented. So I popped it off, I straightened it out, and I just touched this to see if the speakers were any good. And this is supposed to flex up and down. You can see there was cracks in it, but this material here is never supposed to do this. It's supposed to be flexible. It's what helps suspend the cone in place. So the speakers are toast. Yeah, this one's all torn apart already. So we're going to take the screws out, pull the speakers. We'll talk to the customer. This is pretty warped. I don't know what we're going to do to straighten it. We're going to talk about that in a minute. I might put a board and clamp it and glue it underneath here where it doesn't hit anything to straighten it. We'll put a thin veneer over the top, try and save the customer some money, because I think the 2 of these together are around $300 or more. And I think I can put some veneer over the top and fix him up here for 50, 60 bucks and get by, and get these doggone things that are shot anyway out of here. So we're gonna pull this apart here next while he's working on the motor and get this ready. I went and got a couple of new ones to see what the difference was, and that's how far warped this thing is. Actually a little bit more than that if you go corner to corner. So this is warped like 1.5 inches. By the time I fiddly monkey around with trying to repair this one, these are about $100 a piece, less than I thought. Company in Poland is making them now, so we're able to sell them for around $100 a piece. No holes in them, proper laminate, brackets, the whole works here, done properly. I'm just going to put new ones on because I will spend more than I expected. It took me a half an hour just to strip some of this garbage here that had 100 staples in it. You can see the staples all over the place, and fabric. Plus we still have holes. Plus I got to cut veneer and put it on here, so I'm not going to mess with it. The other thing is, His oil pressure line is stiff as a pretzel, and as soon as you bend it, try to curve anything with it, it's weather checking. All the outer insulation is breaking off it. And like I said, it's very, very stiff. So, not going to chance that. This takes the oil pressure from the top of here to the oil gauge. And you can see just how flexible it should be, and the insulation shouldn't be ripping off it and breaking off it. So we actually had one left in stock. So it's a good thing when we sent out a lot of parts for zinc plating, we took a bunch of stuff, well, a good handful or 2 handfuls of things that we had around here that we thought might be good to plate, and we plated extra ones of these, extra ones of these. So when we get to put this together, his stuff was either plated or real scurvy. I already showed you what his looked like here. It was still bolted into the head. So we're going to put a used one of these on that's all plated. I'm leaving this loose so he can aim this the direction he wants. Then he'll lock that down. I believe we've got, yeah, motor oil in this now. Oil filter. Everything's on here with new grommets out the bottom so the metal doesn't chafe on the wires. So we're coming along well, but we're going to use new ones of these and not put them old ratty speakers back in. Okay, on Michael's car, we bought some insulation. We used to have some stuff like tar that you almost had to heat up with a torch and get it to fold in. Here's some insulation. It's reinforced, sticky backed, about 6 millimeters thick, might be 5, about 1/4 inch. We have different patterns here that we've cut out. We've stuck it down to the floors, including the back area. We've got these on here so we can kneel and walk on those for your knees and stuff. Although this padding is a lot nicer now that it's down than before. Got it all pushed down into the... This will sound deaden things. We've got it all the way up underneath the floors here and even down in here. I'll talk to Rob tomorrow. I'm not sure we'll go up that lower firewall. We have one piece of padding left. When you cut out, you have some small pieces, so where I needed to up in here, rather than cut a big sheet up, I cut 2 pieces to there, 2 pieces for here to piece it in, to save on, and we still have the pieces left over here if we want to fill in some here. We're going to be filling in here too, but we may want to put 2 layers on here because that's what the factory had, was a thicker material. So they got a lot done under this hood, possibly enough to go ahead and throw the front suspension and the rear suspension in as well, but I'll talk with them in the morning on that. I think I've already shown here we're ready to put ready to cover the bottom of here with leather, and pretty soon he'll be doing the top of the dash and so on with leather. So I think I showed that already. Bumpers are together, the rear surround is leather. So it's Monday. We'll get the guys will be in tomorrow and we'll get some more video of that. I think I already showed the motor is assembled. Everything fits properly. Good straight assembly here on the generator, which is difficult to do on these cars. We did have to replace this tensioner, which they jammed a nut onto the end of it. Manifolds have all been cleaned, mic'd and inspected. Should fit the exhaust header just fine. Carburetor is cleaned. We do have to balance those when we put them back on. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to Beast End and get it running. My sister is here to help me assemble and do the leather. The headlight pieces in here.
Right.
Getting the headlight grommets mounted inside. I'm not sure what he had. We can't find, the old ones must have been all rotted up. Can't find them.
Make that work.
Got to put new ones in. This side is in.
Seems like they were steel.
We showed the insulation that we were putting in. He's got false floors mounted and the dimmer switch plate and the dimmer switch mounted. Run some cables through and put grommets in here. And we are now trying to fit the wood into here, and the wood's going to have to be trimmed down. Have to trim the wood up in here to fit, because it's hitting this wall, and there's got to be carpet down that wall yet. So we're gonna have to shave that down, figure out what's going on. I can tap this wall back a little bit. It looks to me like it's got to go probably 3/8 of an inch. So we're gonna have to take a look at that. We'll fit the other side in.
Other side fits other than one tab on the one side is like that long. It's gonna stick way up to that.
So we just have to trim it down a little bit or something.
We can cut it and drill another hole.
Okay. Rob's just polishing and cleaning things up here so that they look nice. So everything's kind of
Getting all the red off.
everything's kind of tarnished. Getting ready to put the rear end in, and then I'm having pie. Okay. We've already shown this, but I've laid the reproduction over top. These are too close to this edge. See how far this is away? These are like right on the edge. So these are not located correctly. I got to move them. Not happy about that because these are all finished nicely. They look good. Line this up over top. You can see how far off the pin is. If I take this new one and put this pin in that hole, then this thing sits crooked like that. Short here, hits the wall of the metal here, hangs off 1/4, 3/8 of an inch over the frame of the car here, and these still, this might clip in, but that one won't. So we're gonna take this, we're gonna move this over, drill these out, put new rivets in, probably move it over here just a little bit, move it up where it belongs, so it'll actually fit the car. Shouldn't have to, but that's life. We'll get that down here because we're getting ready to put the rear end in, get these fit in, and start the carpet in the back. Matter. Trying to get that tight. Rear end is in. Gonna be hooking up brake lines and stuff through. I'm gonna show you one thing. We're putting the seats together. Seat adjusters are, wish I'd have known it earlier. Someone else took the seats apart, didn't realize that the seat adjuster levers are missing. The little tab on this one's gone. Little tab on this one's gone. One of the adjusters laying here somewhere is broken and shattered. I had it laying here. I got it. There's one of the adjusters. They put it right back on this way. But it's, can't use that. She's broke. If it had a lever in it that I could take off and put in something else, I'd try to rebuild them, but you can't buy those anymore. Here's an adjuster. He has to have one new one. I'm going to use these. He can always change these in the future if he wishes to. So only one flapper, he's going to have only one little flipper. I'm putting new rubbers in them. So we'll put them on. He'll just have either none. He'll have this rubber plug will go inside here, but we're putting new ones in because these are like pretzels, they're so hard. So I have new rubbers for that right here in this bag. They snap in here. So the seat, when it comes down, will lay on that rubber. If he wants to tilt it forward a little bit more, he puts that one in there. If he had one, he could flip the little lever in. So let's say this was on the seat and he wanted the seat to tilt just that far. He put that little lever in and it lays down over top of this rubber, gives him that height. He can leave that one there, fold this one in on top of it, and now the seat is more tilted forward, depending on the size of the person and so on. So he will have the big one, and the main one, he will not have the option of the little one, because he only owns 2 of those, not 4. So maybe, let me see something here. See, the 2 brackets that he has with the back levers are the same ones, and you use the right and the left on a car. So see the notch here opposite. So I can't like put both of them on one seat. So he's just not going to be able to use that little trip lever on either seat. So this one's going back together, that rubber will go in there. New rubbers in that. I'll put new rubbers on all these. Then we'll get some shots. Now the other thing I wanted to show is we came up with a bunch of used pieces here that we've accumulated over the years, because he had this one here and this one here are the only 2 that the car had. We think this one goes here and this spacer goes inside of there. I don't know what they did, but they didn't have them. So Rob dug me up. He did have all of these, however. All these outer chrome pieces. And he had all the screws. But he didn't have all of these. So Rob grabbed me a handful of them. Here's a new one out of stock that I don't think I'll need, because we have enough other used ones here. We're going to see if we have enough of these tapered ones for the seat pivot. We have 3. We have 3 of those, and I now have 4 of these. Looks like they come in different thicknesses sometimes to space the seat one way or the other, so that these beads line up. Space the seat. You have a little bit of fudge room in here because this is much wider than that. So we'll get it together, get some shots when we're done, and see if we have enough pieces to put everything back together properly. And if we don't, or if these pieces here are missing, then there are some like chrome covers that we can put down here and cover some imperfections. What do we got right here? This may be able to go on here like that with that spacer inside, and it'll cover that area, make it look better. So we'll see as we get it together. I did find it, by the way.
You did? Oh, good.
Been polishing some things up, including little handles for the seats. This is cracked and proper with a spring here. When you flip the handle, it trips it back, so the seat latches. This other seat frame lever is broken on the end, so the spring is missing. So you'll have to manually flip this one up and manually flip it back because there's no spring to, and it's bent, but we'll straighten that. But as far as I know, you cannot buy these. So we'll have to use what we got. We sent quite a variety of pieces out for plating, but normally on the front suspension. Michael's pieces here are all crushed. And he's even missing some of these sleeves. You can see that that sleeve is very pitted. We painted it up, but we couldn't find the other ones. We know the bolts weren't correct, so and only one of these plates. Instead of selling him a $300 and some kit, I went and robbed the pieces we actually need out of the kit, and that's these pieces right here. These large rubber cups that he has, they still have some resilience to them. Not perfect, but they still have some rubber, softness. So we're going to leave those in there and remove those price-wise from the kit and just charge him for this assembly here so we can get this back together. This gives him the correct bolts, the correct sleeves, and the correct lock tabs to lock things in place. He seems to be missing some of these, two of these. These we wouldn't use over again anyway. You can see how much smashed they are. They're squashed and elongated, so we wouldn't use these over anyway. We had these plated. They go on the bottom, the sway bar up to the frame. Did I give you new sway bar rubbers? If not, I'll get you those.
I put them on the sway bar.
Actually, these are in pretty good shape, aren't they?
Knock the rust off.
If you want, they still got some rubber stretchiness to it. Okay. Oh, you painted up the grill screen, I see. That came out nice. Okay, making progress. Rob's still hiding under the car. You're putting on brake lines, aren't you? A good many you had to replace. Some of them you're able to use over because they're good.
The only one I used over was the right or the left rear because it was brand new.
Otherwise, they were pitted and shot. Can't trust them. We just put the front suspension in. I got all the bolts tight. Got one more motor mount to drop right here. Got the engine on a stand. It's completed. Notice that the flywheel ring gear is nicked up and chewed up, so I've been taking this file to it. Little bumps of burrs of metal all the way around it. Starter looks to be correct. It's the heavy flange starter. The bushings are in good shape. The drive gear looks to be in good shape. Spin's decent. Bushings aren't shot. So we think this got rebuilt after this damage happened. So now that we can get to it, we're cleaning up the damage. You can see that some of the teeth are nicked down, but the starter, when it engages, drops about halfway into the gear, so there's plenty of meat left. We've gotten these in here where these gears are ground all the way down to here and there's hardly anything left to bite. So these are all beveled a little bit and help the gear to get engaged. I'm just checking the bevels and making sure that there's a bevel there yet and cleaning up the imperfections on the top. Take about a half hour here and we'll have her cleaned up. It beats buying another green gear and sweating it on, but I think they're $300-400 and doesn't really need it if we clean it up. We put a lot of things here on the motor. That last motor mount is here so that we don't have to monkey with the generator, set it in. Starter's mounted, transmission, valve housing, clutch assemblies all in, flywheel that we cleaned up. Gasket ready here. As we mentioned, front suspension's in. The only thing we're missing at this point, which I don't believe he even had, is a ground strap that will go from here to here. The starter is mounted in rubber and needs a proper ground. So the ground to the battery comes down to here, and to ground the rest of the vehicle, you need a jumper across. I'm not sure how they did it before, but it was either broken or it's shot, whatever. We're building a ground strap for here. So seats are assembled. Whatever we had for the side adjusters we used, we had to put one new one in. So he'll have the large flap to adjust where the seats can tilt back against it. And if that's too far forward, then he can flip this way and this way. And then the seat will lean back a little bit farther and hit down here. If that's not comfortable enough for them, they cannot use this here because they don't have one over here. So if that doesn't work out for them, they're going to have to replace these other ones. It's the same way on both seats. One of these adjusters here is new, the other one is not, but it doesn't have the rear flipper. So I believe they're somewhere in the $200 a piece range. So I did not put them on. I only put the one on that we had to because his was split right open and was breaking in half. So again, we're ready to pop that motor in. Once you get that engine in there, we'll get some shots of that. I'll get some shots of what we have here so far. Really looking great here from the bottom. I mean, looks new. Actually, kind of is. Not sure if they're putting together a list of what we may have had to use or not. This is actually a used spring that you can see. We didn't notice it at the time. It's about ready to be worn out right there, so we'll discuss putting a new one on. The rubber here is new. All these bolts and attaching pieces are new. You know, motor mounts, everything come off pretty rusty. The bolts here that mount the drive shaft, we had to put a whole set of used ones because they were either wrong or nicked up. We didn't have to use anything new other than the cotter pins. So the drive shaft is installed, mounted. He did have to have a used one of these because it was banged up. Missing grease fitting here. I got to remember to do that. Brake lines are hooked up. Everything's hooked up pretty much back here. Now we're painting up. He had one line coming out of his fuel tank. Actually, the other one was capped off. We're going to use one line coming out of the tank, attach it through here, come up through here. He does not have and did not have a fuel filter assembly which uses two lines, and then it diverts it to a hose and goes to the fuel pump with a filter canister on top. He doesn't have any of that. I'll discuss with him what he would like to do, but at this point we're going to go back with what he had. Radiator's in. We'll get a shot when the car comes back down as to what we got going on there. The dash is leather covered on the bottom where it gets it. Will get covered inside of here, and they're skiving right now the leather for the bottom of that. I think I mentioned already the seats are assembled. Don't think I can see it from down here yet.
Oh, I guess you can see it pretty good. The dash top is leather covered. That is done now, all the way across. He's been busy today. Looks like he left his flashlight turned on in there when he put the car up. So,
Let the car down and get his flashlight and turn it off. Something, and this is not against this particular customer or any other customer, but just something I wanted to mention while I have it here. We try to give people an idea of what it will cost to do different things. And the difficulty is, as you've seen if you have been watching the video or other videos that we do on cars, the problem you run across when you get things apart, in this case, all these mechanisms here do operate, and they do operate properly. We've sprayed them and greased them and cleaned them up. Virtually all of his cables, except one I believe, were intact and usable. But you don't know until you get things apart. You also don't know who worked on it before you, what did they do, what they put together correctly. Many times when we take these type of mechanisms apart, there's special shoulder bolts that are supposed to be in these places, and a collar here, a threaded collar. The bolts for them are not plain bolts, but many times that's what we find in there. This has to be a shoulder bolt so it doesn't tear into and ruin the bushings. The threads can't come in contact with the bushings, so it's a special bolt, probably a $20 bolt. So we got to make sure that that bolt is correct and in there. Same thing down here. And many times when we take things apart, they aren't correct. They're just not what's supposed to be there. So we have to try and accommodate that. It was like the bolts in the drive shaft. They put a drive shaft back on this fella's car here, where we showed earlier, where the yokes were all bent and elongated and the bolts were all screwed up. And we had to sell him half of a drive shaft, and therefore the bolts that were attached in that area were also bad. So we're getting him used bolts. You don't want to have to buy new ones if you don't have to, because they're a special shoulder bolt and they're very expensive. Now this is a used fuel line that was in very nice shape that I've sanded all down and repainting. Normally there'd be an end on here, but because his car does not have the fuel filter assembly, we've nipped this off, we're going to put a hose on it and put it back the way it was. Here's his fuel tank that's been cleaned up. Wasn't a lot wrong with it, just surface rust and all that. And they've painted it up. Looks like they might have sprayed it with a rust-proofing compound of some sort besides black paint. So just to mention that you never know when you're taking things apart what you're going to find. And if you watch the videos on these cars, you'll see that we're always finding something else that was an issue. Wrong bolts, wrong this, wrong brackets, or no brackets. Shoulder bolts weren't used, regular bolts were used, and so on. And so you got to keep that in mind if anybody watching is a potential customer either here or somewhere else. You got to keep in mind until that car comes apart and you find out what you're working with. Very hard to give you a proper idea of what it's going to cost to fix. Okay, we lowered the car. See the radiators mounted, heaters, boxes, all that. I didn't know if I got that before. Generators wired. A lot of the water lines, water tubes, all that is there with stainless steel clamps. I know that I didn't film that before because I just picked the clamps up about an hour and a half ago. We ran out of them here and had to go buy stainless steel clamps. It's coming together really nice. It looks just beautiful. And that piece that we had to put on, you can see that everything is lined up properly and we don't have to worry about a leak there any longer. Got the horns in and wired. The headlight wiring is still laying in here. We got to pull that through. But it's all linked up inside. Put the grommets in. I didn't stuff them in the bottom yet, but we're going to pull the wiring through for the headlights probably tomorrow. A little better shot here of the dash leathering. Then this will get trimmed tomorrow. There's a panel lays right in front of the molding that's painted. That gets bolted down, then we trim, we mark where it is, trim just underneath of it, and then the leather is trimmed off and that panel gets bolted on. Then the windshield frame can be dropped in place. This is Thursday, and we will get back tomorrow, which will be the 20, this is the 27th, so tomorrow will be the 28th of September. New seals are around the windshield frame and the bottom. Put it all together. Little areas that you have to put a little bit of sealant into. The original seals years ago gave you an extra piece of rubber here that went inside this joint and shoved the rubber out better. It's not available anymore, so we just put some sealant in there. It'll pull that up. But anyway, this is back together. Took and made a trowel for spreading the glue that goes on the back wall. He's wet sanding so he can buff out the cowl area here so that we can get the windshield frame and the posts all back on and mounted, kind of taping off the body so he doesn't get junk everywhere on that clean engine compartment and so on. So we're plugging away at it. Showed this before. He has this cut and put in. This has to be trimmed when the glove box door and stuff goes on. So the pad for inside of here is all leather lined now. And they'll be rubbing this out so we can leather that and put that on. We'll get back in a few more hours. These gauges looked halfway decent when we pulled them out. They've been all polished up. There's the tack. Speedometer. Somebody put a battery operated clock, which means we're going to have to run another wire up to that. 2 wires actually to get the clock operational. Have to come off the ignition side so it's not running all the, actually you want it to run all the time, so going to have to run it off the battery side. We have not tested this. Need to polish up that ring a little bit. Oil pressure. The decal inside is a little blistered, but the gauge all looks decent. We'll use that. This one here is all cloudy inside. So I think we're going to pop that ring, clean that glass, and put a new chrome ring on it. So the gauges all look nice. I will run this in and boil some water and drop that end in. Maybe put some more shrink tubing on here, but I'm not going to do that unless I'm sure. We might have to just tape it. This is all soldered together. I don't know if I can get shrink tube over that or not. But we're going to go test this. I think I'm going to have my son pop this ring because it, compared to the other gauges, it's just all cloudy. I don't know if you can see it very well in the we've wiped it off and wiped it off. All that cloudiness is on the inside. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 strips of, I don't know if water condensed in here or what the heck happened, but I'll have my son, I think, check it to make sure the gauge works. And then we'll put a new ring on it. Okay, we've got the temperature gauge here now. We've warmed up some stuff in the microwave. There is a tiny little hair inside this gauge that we can't do a darn thing about. Now my son's gonna drop that in the hot water. I've warmed up some water for about a minute, and the water is at 160 degrees. So I can't calibrate this. I don't know what temperature that water is, but it looks like it works just fine because it went right straight up. So we're just gonna use, he just pulled it out, so now it's going back down. So it looks like that works. He's gonna have to live with the hair. Hopefully maybe it'll drop down. You can see it right there. Maybe it'll drop into the bottom and be gone, but otherwise it's not real noticeable. But I'm not taking this all apart, spending time and money to clean a tiny hair out of the inside. I don't think the customer is gonna be too worried about that.